Hi everyone, and welcome to Soul GPS. My name is Ava, and today I am going to talk more about the 7 character traits that make you a narcissist target and very likely keep you stuck for way too long in toxic relationships. This is part 2 of a 7-part series, and today we're going to focus on empathy, or more specifically, hyper-empathy, which is an extreme form of empathy that the narcissist or toxic manipulator is going to push you towards in a relationship with them. So just to recap, the 7 traits are as follows. Number 1 is conscientiousness, which is the video that I just did prior to this one. That was part 1. Number 2 is empathy. Number 3, cooperativeness. Number 4, it's optimism. Number 5, fear of failure. Number 6, attachment or hyper-attachment. And number 7, sentimentality. So again, just want to put this into context that all of these traits are very positive when they are in an appropriate context. Think social worker, mother, brother, wife or husband of a person who is able to appreciate, reciprocate, and respond to you being empathic, conscientious, optimistic in a way that is not damaging, that doesn't seek to destroy, doesn't exploit. You get the idea. However, when we put these traits into the context of a toxic relationship, when you're with someone who by nature is exploitative, is destructive, seeks to put you down constantly, is envious at their core, which breeds hatred and resentment, then these characteristics will become risk factors. That's just the name of the game. And by going through this process of taking yourself out of those toxic relationships, first of all, becoming aware of it, taking yourself out and healing yourself, you arm yourself with tremendous wisdom that I think all of us need in today's day and age, which shows more and more signs of a narcissistic culture. So again, this doesn't mean that you should stop being empathic or optimistic. This just means that you have to be very much aware of the context, of the social context that you're in, and protect yourself, basically. Have boundaries, right? So let's look at empathy. What does it mean when someone is empathic? It means basically that he or she, you, are able to understand how I feel, right? You can tune into other people effortlessly. It's something that comes to you naturally. You can see other people's point of view very easily too. So it's what we call putting yourself in their shoes. Again, very effortless for you. And again, it's a wonderful thing when we're trying to consider, say, solving a problem, a global problem, right? When we're looking at saving species of gorillas that are endangered, when we can imagine ourselves being, a species on the brink of extinction. It's easy for an empathic person to feel that pain. But for someone who's a narcissist, they don't give a rat's ass about that. What else? An empathic person can feel other people's emotions quite literally. Some people who are very much on the hyper spectrum, when they sit with someone who has a backache, they can feel the backache. When they are in a relationship with someone who has chronic pain of some sort or an injury, they can actually grow into feeling that, almost as if they take it on their shoulders. So those are the hyper-empathic people. Now, there's something really wonderful about being empathic, right? It's a very attractive trait for everyone, especially narcissists, because they seek sort of like a low-hanging fruit there. They can exploit you. So it makes a lot of people attracted to you, and your openness and your warmth. It makes you glow as an empath. Makes you glow, makes you lean in, makes you an amazing listener, turns you into a sensitive partner. And narcissists will absolutely sense an opportunity here and swoop in. Again, just a quick note on the I attract narcissists. Be very careful falling into that frame of thought. I am actually a big challenger of the whole law of attraction. I've made some videos about it. I'm not going to get into this in this video because that would be a long video. But you got to be very careful about thinking and taking all this responsibility that you've attracted. I understand that in some ways it can give you an edge, like a sense of power, like I did it, I created it, so I can change it. But it's not as simple as that. The truth is that all sorts of people circulate around you all the time. And it's not so much about the ones that get into your sphere of influence, right? But it's more about who do you let in? Who do you allow to stay after they've shown you their true colors? So just want to be clear about that. Don't think it's all about you attracting people, okay? So again, this whole idea of being an empath, being bad, or making you susceptible to this relationship is very context dependent. Again, like having empathy as a doctor, a therapist, a social worker, with someone who's able to appreciate and reciprocate and respond to this is wonderful. It creates tight, beautiful bonds. However, if you're tuning into the story of someone who's manipulative, who's controlling and even malicious on the malignant spectrum, then you're walking into a hollow pit of trouble. In relationships, empathy inevitably leads to deep attachment. So when you're with someone who's disordered, you are sensing their disorder and feeling like you may be the one to fix them. This is extremely common and can keep you stuck in a relationship with a narcissist for a long time because you want to help them heal. And on top of that, if you have this propensity towards thinking in spiritual terms, like, they're my soulmate, like he's the one and I'm the one, and they can tell you that, they can feed you that crap too. This happens a lot. Then you can fall into the trap even deeper, because he or she will reinforce in you the thinking that you were the savior, right? And as someone who is deeply empathic, you may have that tendency to want to save other people. So be very aware of this. What else? Well, this will create tight bond, a trauma bond, we call it, right? Because you're empathizing with the disorder, you're empathizing with the victim story, and you're sensing that there's something off. I had just talked to a client earlier today who told me that their child, who wasn't able to really articulate this in the terms that we're using here, they said, Mom, because she was in a relationship with narcissists, Mom, there's something really wrong with this man. There's something not quite right. See, even children can sense it. Even animals can sense it. Something is simply wrong. And you can pick up on it as an empath like this. But you may be fooled by the victim story. You see, it's almost like they really need that layer to take you off track, to fool you into thinking that it's not as bad, or that yes, there's something wrong and you're the one who can fix it. So be careful with that. Sorry about the dog barks. I hope they're not getting in the way too much. It's the weekend, lots of people out, lots of dogs in the neighborhood. You get the picture. So about the trauma bond, a lot of people say like, okay, well, all right, so you lay out the issue, the problem, how do I come out of it? It's a long process. It's a process that can take months, sometimes years. It can become a lifetime practice, really, to be able to recognize quickly when you're in a social situation or even in a relationship with information, with media these days. I mean, we're always plugged in, always connected. You can be bonded to a channel, to a brand, to characters that are fictitious, that don't even exist, and empathize with them, and that story can trail you. So you need to be able to find that and realize and recognize that and free yourself, detach yourself from that, so you can regain your sovereignty. So this thing is pervasive, and that's why I like to think of it in terms of, gaining tools that will last you a lifetime. And to help you do that, I created this program called Unchained. It's on my website. There's a link to it down below, which has about 15 hours of footage, me taking you from A to Z, basically, through these steps of healing yourself and getting your sovereignty, your freedom back. Again, it's very in-depth, and I can't just like put it into one video. It's too much. So that's available. Just wanted to put it out there. But this sensing, this sensing into the disorder and feel like you can fix it, the manipulator knows this. They know you're tuning in, and they will use it against you. For example, they will, of course, they start with a pity story, and they all do it. The grandiose and the covert, shy narcissists, they all devolve eventually, even within minutes of meeting you, hours or days, sometimes weeks. They will devolve into the pity story where you feel constantly sorry for them. They use it specifically to keep you in check, to keep emotional control over you. So it can be a life story, or it can be also situational. For instance, they come home, they tell you that something happened to them, they got cut off in traffic, or somebody was mean to them at the store, whatever, they were somehow hurt or wronged. And you feel for them because that's your nature, and you want to help them. And then inevitably, they're going to snap. It's usually just around the corner, and something will set them off, and they will lash out at you. And if you start to question their behavior and say, well, you're not being nice, or you shouldn't do that. You should be you should be a little bit more empathic, which is pretty impossible. Well, actually, I shouldn't say it's impossible, because narcissists can be empathic. They just choose not to. But if you try to question them in any way, they will turn it right around at you and then say, well, can't you see I'm stressed? I just told you that I was mistreated. You remember I was abused as a child. It's almost as if they're using this as a free pass to abuse you, right? So they will tell you things like, why can't you be more sensitive? And it kind of dovetails with the conscientiousness factor, which was in the first video that I shot about this in the series. Which evokes within you this deep desire, this almost obligation to be good, right? So, and also if you're empathic, you'll have the tendency to feel more into what's on the outside of you, so other people, than what's inside of you. So it will make you ignore your own needs and tend to other people, and it basically turns you to a people pleaser, right? Both men and women do this, and in normal circumstances this can get you far, because being a pleasant person, and doing nice things for other people helps you form social bonds, social networks. But in toxic relationships, again, where it goes too far, you're being pushed into that extreme end. Your assets, your valuable traits are being used against you, and it makes you dig your own grave. So you have to be very careful. And most of us can feel when it's going too far, when you have to constantly apologize, where you have to constantly be the one who's listening. You feel like it's not being reciprocated. So how do empathic people express their empathy, right? What does it look like in action? Well, you can read their body language. You can even, see their eye movements. You see when they're looking at you and when they're distracted. You can read them, right? You can anticipate their needs and their wants. You're a very good listener. And you're typically somebody who doesn't like confrontation. You have a hard time defending yourself also, because you feel bad when you become too harsh towards someone. You feel their pain, so you feel wrong for doing this because it's not what you're about. Isn't that interesting, right? So this is why it can feel like you have lost your sense of self after leaving a relationship like this, a relationship with a narcissist, because your empathy, your goodness were exploited. And because you value being empathic and being good towards others more than anything, and it actually hurts you, being good hurts you, you can feel lost and hollow afterwards, like you don't know who you are. So you've been probably taught by your parents or your teachers and society in general that you are a good person, and that's a good thing. In theory, it's rewarded. it's a good thing. But unfortunately, because we're living in a culture that increasingly rewards people who are exploitative, who are more popular, like popularity is more important than being moral and morality, then it sends that message, and we can spiral down into feeling like we don't like ourselves. It can even bring on self-hatred and tremendous sense of self-doubt, and that's why it can feel so painful afterwards. It's really tough place to be stuck in. It's stuck in thinking that being good, being me, has hurt me. And maybe you start asking yourself, maybe being good and empathic, conscientious isn't a good thing, but being good is all I know. So it creates a sense of inner vacancy, tremendous cognitive dissonance, and a debilitating confusion. So here's a correction. Being good didn't hurt you. It's not having boundaries that hurt you. The narcissist hurt you, not you. The narcissist hurt you. We need to put the blame when the blame is due, the responsibility where it's due. But the brain needs time to see this clearly. When I say this right now, it seems so obvious, but I remember when I was in the midst of that pain, and I just people would tell me, but it wouldn't register. It takes time. It takes talking about it, thinking about it, and correcting yourself. It's like we're being programmed to keep veering off course until we fall into the abyss, go off the cliff. But we have to keep pulling ourselves back and self-correcting, saying, no, go straight, don't go right. Right leads to damage. Right leads to hurt. Right leads to suffering. So you have to remember this. So being good is good. We need more good people in our world. So don't let the narcissist and the narcissistic culture fool you. In fact, your goodness and your empathy turned towards yourself, towards you, is what is going to help you heal and become more aware, more intelligent, and more resilient, which is something we all need in today's day and age. So your enemy is not your empathic personality, but giving away your goodness without having internal checks. And we learn to develop these internal checks or boundaries usually after we've been through it, because it's something that unfortunately isn't being taught. So in that sense, being too good, too empathic, hyper-empathic can be bad for you. It's like you keep walking into the fire and getting burnt, even though it hurts you. You keep walking back in because you're seeking relief. You're seeking something positive in the pit of vipers. So you've got to snap yourself out of that trance and say, enough, I have to stop doing this. Because this will keep you tied to a toxic person past the point of sanity. So as soon as you're aware, as soon as you're becoming aware of this, that this is bad for me, and there can be something good for me out there, and I can learn to be wise through this, you have to stop this pattern and put it into action. Again, I put together this program called Unchained that dives very, very deeply into this process of coming out of this destructive spiral of self-blame. And I invite you to come in and join our community. But for now, this is it. Our next episode is going to be on cooperativeness and how that can become, a risk factor in those toxic relationships. But for now, I'm going to say thank you for your attention. I hope this helped. I look forward to your comments. Again, I apologize for the dogs. They seem to be going nuts. They're having their own party tonight, apparently. Hopefully you were able to hear me and this wasn't too disruptive. And I look forward to checking out the comments that you leave. All the best to you. Sending you much love.